33%. That's how much larger this year's law school applicant pool is compared to last year, according to the latest ABA data. A 33% jump even before Halloween. That means tens of thousands of new candidates are entering the law school race for the same number of seats. If you're applying to law school this year, that's both exciting and terrifying. It's exciting because interest in law school is surging, which is proof that the law degree still holds real prestige and value. But it's also terrifying because everybody thinks they're the next Harvey Specter. So today I'm going to break down why applications are spiking again, what that means for your law school odds, and exactly how you can stand out no matter how crowded the field gets. The first big question, of course, is why are we seeing this surge? There are three factors all playing a role creating that perfect storm. We have the economy, politics, and AI. Law school admissions is counter-cyclical. That means demand spikes when the economy is bad. When the economy is good, demand drops. And the economy these days is kind of uncertain. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, unemployment for recent college grads is 5.3%, which is actually higher than unemployment in the general economy. So imagine spending 4 years in undergrad, taking on $200,000 in debt, and then actually having a harder time getting a job as a result. And of course, this is not the first time we've seen this happen. I've been doing this for 20 years. Back in 2008, we had the financial crisis leading to a spike in demand for law school. We saw it again in 2020, and we're seeing it again today. The second big factor is politics. When people are more politically engaged, interest in law school spikes as folks want to change the system from within. We saw this in the 2016 year with the presidential race then. We saw it in 2020, and of course, we're seeing it again now, even into 2025, no longer in a presidential cycle, but politics is crazy. Things are happening. The Supreme Court makes controversial decisions. People want to go to law school to change the system from within. The third big factor is a new one, but it's also pretty significant. It's artificial intelligence. AI is eating jobs in marketing, coding, and finance, so people are looking for careers where human judgment still matters. And law can feel like one of the last bastions of human reasoning. And of course, AI can summarize a case, but it can't look a judge in the eye and make a moral judgment that affects someone else's life. And so people being squeezed by economics, fired by politics, and nervous about AI, all sprinting towards law school. That's why we're seeing this boom today. But the real question is, of course, what does this mean for you? Let's visualize it with some numbers. Last year, imagine there were 100 people in line for every 100 law school seats. This year, there are 133 people in that same line. No new seats, just more people elbowing their way into that game of musical chairs. That 33-person overflow turns into more waitlists, more rejections, and tougher scholarship odds. This is what I call competitive compression. Everything shifts upward. LSAT medians rise, GPA cutoffs tighten, and scholarship pools shrink. So if last year a 165 and a 3.5 got you into a top 30 program, this year you might need a 170 and a 3.8 just to keep pace. And that is the bad news. But the good news is that you're not powerless, because even in a crowded field, if you've got the numbers, you've still got a shot. And by the way, if you're looking for support with your LSAT prep, you want a little help getting that boost, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons to everybody out there watching this. You can book your call with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. I want to help out as many folks as I can out there. It's 100% free. So let's talk about how you compete when the odds tighten. You control your timing, you control your test score, and you control the story that you tell. Law school admissions is on a rolling basis, meaning the earlier you apply, the better your odds. And when things are more competitive, timing becomes leverage. If you can be ready for the LSAT by November or January at the earliest, you're relatively early in the review pile. But if you're taking it in February or April, you're a bit behind the curve. It's like buying concert tickets. If you're an early fan, you get the floor seats. If you're a latecomer, you get the nosebleeds. You don't want to be fighting over leftovers. So if you want a front row spot in law school admissions, you want to start now, ideally knocking out the LSAT by November or January at the latest. But don't rush it for November if you won't be ready in time. It's better to apply 2 months later in January with a higher score than earlier in October or November with a lower score. Now, the LSAT is still the ultimate multiplier, and law schools will claim they review applications holistically, but that's not what the data shows. Especially when you've got 33% more people applying, they've got no choice but to rely on the numbers. That's why the LSAT is still the great equalizer, especially now. And if your undergrad GPA isn't what you wanted it to be, maybe you were working while you were in school, maybe you had family obligations or an emergency, or you just were not mature enough to take full advantage of the opportunities available to you at the time, the LSAT is the biggest lever you can still control today. And even getting 3 more points on the LSAT could be worth tens of thousands of dollars in financial aid. This is the math of how schools allocate money. And since logic games are off the test, the focus is entirely on logical reasoning and reading comp. Logical reasoning is now 2/3 of your score, meaning you've got to learn how to spot conclusions instantly. You want to be able to predict the answer before you even look at the choices whenever possible, and you want to be able to ID the flaw hiding underneath the argument. You want to understand cause and effect, comparisons, samples, and so on. And so for this reason, when we work with students, we train them to read like the test makers, not a test taker. Once you start seeing the logic through the eyes of the people who make the exam, your score is going to jump fast. Of course, you don't want to neglect reading comprehension either. And you're not reading for details, you're reading for structure. After every single paragraph, you want to pause and summarize it in just one sentence. You want to note contrast words like however, but, and yet, because that's where the authors reveal their true opinion. And you also want to build up your stamina. Most people lose points not from misunderstanding, but from fatigue. So practice in short bursts every single day, like a workout. Don't try to cram it all into just one day of the week. Now, storytelling in your personal statement is like your narrative LSAT score. It reveals your reasoning for why you want to go to law school, how you connect the dots of your background and make meaning out of it. Now, don't say, I've always been passionate about justice. Everybody says that, super cliche. You want to zoom in on memorable moments. For example, when I translated eviction paperwork for a neighbor, I realized how much power lies in plain language. That day, I decided to study law, not for theory, but for access. You want to be vivid, specific, and honest. The reflective essays, the ones that show growth or humility, will often resonate more than a laundry list of your achievements from your resume. Now that we know why this cycle is different, let's talk about what's going to happen next. The pace of applications will slow. We're not going to be up 33% year over year by the end of the cycle. It'll probably be more like 20, maybe 25% up by the end of the year. But that does mean we're going to see a lot more people being shunted off to the waitlist as schools hedge their bets. Schools are going to engage more in yield protection, meaning they want to reject people who are overqualified, who seem unlikely to attend, and there's going to be less scholarship money available because schools just won't need to offer as much in order to fill their seats. So you want to have a good balance of reach, target, and safety schools, not just T14 prestige names, because a lower ranked school with more scholarship money could change your entire financial trajectory for the rest of your career. And also, like I said, apply early by the end of January if you can. Now, don't get discouraged when you see people posting that they got a full ride on Reddit. You don't want to be refreshing your email 50 times a day and wondering when you don't hear back from schools if silence means rejection. It's normal to have to wait months and months. The people who make it through to the end of the cycle, maintaining their sanity, stay calm and consistent. Just as the LSAT rewards discipline, law school admissions does also. So build a schedule you can sustain with both your LSAT prep and your applications, and get busy. Once you send in your application, work on something else, volunteer, catch up with friends, get back to your other obligations, because you want to maintain your composure. This process will unfold over the course of months, not just weeks. And the numbers do play a role, but the LSAT is not everything, of course. While the LSAT as a whole is incredibly important, no one particular test date will make or break you. You can always retake if November doesn't go your way. If October doesn't go your way, you can always go for January or even February and still to apply to law school this cycle. Now, we've got a question here from Christian asking, is there a higher demand for law schools that are done online? So yes, I am seeing a tremendous amount of demand for people wanting to go to law schools, whether entirely online, like St. Mary's, for example, or hybrid programs like Mitchell Hamlin, or Syracuse. The ABA has provisionally approved these law schools, meaning that they've gotten special permission to conduct law school online. But many more people want to go to these law schools than there are slots available. And so when you see a given LSAT median or GPA median for one of those schools, that is in aggregate. That's not specific to the online program itself, meaning you might actually need higher numbers to go to the online version of that program because everybody wants these schools. And so if you are limited to online only or hybrid only, aim for significantly above the medians of those schools and apply to every single one of them is my take, because that gives you more optionality, gives you more scholarship negotiation leverage. Well worth considering, of course, due to the flexibility these programs offer, but also know that everybody wants to go to those kinds of schools. Now, we got a question here about the removal of logic games and how that's affecting things. And so after LSAC removed logic games, that was after the June 2024 LSAT, so we're about a year and a half almost into that change. They replaced logic games with a second scored logical reasoning section. So now you have 2 scored sections of logical reasoning, 1 scored section of reading comp, and 1 unscored extra section of either reasoning or reading comp. So don't use those hand-me-down textbooks from a friend that still mentioned logic games. Give those to your worst enemy. Focus on the modern LSAT format. And LSAC, by the way, has redone all of the prep tests in the new LSAT format in Law Hub Advantage. The old prep tests numbered 1 to 94 are now outdated. You now have LSATs numbered 101 to 158 available inside your lsac.org account from Law Hub Advantage. And if logical reasoning, by the way, was your weak spot before, it's time to level up, because any gains you make in your understanding of logical reasoning are doubled across the 2 sections. But you also don't want to neglect reading comprehension either, because it's still, of course, a third of the test. So you probably want to devote roughly 2/3 of your time to logical reasoning, roughly 1/3 to reading comp, and of course, 0% to logic games. Now, LSAC has incorporated more formal logic or conditional logic style reasoning in the logical reasoning section. Since they can no longer do this on logic games, since of course logic games is no longer on the test, these questions have always appeared on the LSAT up to this point, but now they're a bit more prevalent than they used to be. Now, if you're taking the LSAT in a couple weeks or in a couple months, you probably want to get out of the drilling and do more work with individual sections and full-length timed exams. If you're working or in school, I typically recommend 1 timed exam a week plus detailed review of that exam. If you have the leisure to do nothing but study for the LSAT full-time, I recommend 2 timed exams a week and detailed review of those exams. And if you're taking the LSAT in a few weeks, but you're thinking you might want to retake it in a couple of months, I would recommend holding back some recent full-length exams to save for a potential retake. So if exams 158 is the newest exam, which is at the time of this recording, then I would say save a handful of the exams in the 150s to use later for your potential retake if you need to. And if you really want to build up endurance, you do some section sittings with 5 sections rather than only 4, so that 4 sections will feel easier in comparison. And please, please, please move away from the drilling, because it's not enough to get the questions right. You got to get them right under test day conditions, considering pacing, time management, and endurance. And a lot of students are using these third-party platforms from a private prep company to drill questions, but test day is not a drill. And the format, the software, the interface of test day itself will look and feel different from the third-party platform. So I recommend transitioning your prep into LSAC's Law Hub Advantage. You get a full year of access to all 58 numbered exams, plus a couple thousand other questions for only $120 a year. And LSAC is not paying me to mention or promote it, but I wish they were. But it's well worth it. I honestly think it's well worth the investment, considering that $120 for Law Hub is a drop in the bucket compared to the cost of law school itself. Well worth investing in the modern LSAT format and getting familiar with what you're going to be tested on for test day itself. Now, how to review. Most people will look at the answer key and say to themselves, oh, I get it now, and then move on. But the problem is, unless you truly understand the reason for your mistake, you may just end up making the same mistake again, which is a huge waste of time and burning through valuable limited material, and also, of course, not getting you the full value of your work because every question that you get wrong is an opportunity to learn something new. So you want to engage in the Socratic review method to get to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why, so that you can avoid making the same mistake again. Now, top scorers don't necessarily do more questions than anybody else, but they get more value out of every question they complete. Now, every time you miss a question or you get it right for the wrong reason, you want to ask yourself, what was the author trying to do? Meaning, what was the structure of the argument? Was it a conclusion and support? Was it just a set of facts? Was there a flaw? If you understand the role of each sentence, that's going to change how you see every question. Secondly, you want to ask, what was the question asking? Not just what type of question was it? I want you to go deeper here. Ask, what skill was this testing? Was it testing your ability to spot inferences? Was it testing your ability to recognize assumptions? Was it testing your understanding of precise language? You want to name it, you want to own it, you want to internalize it. Then you want to ask, why did I fall for the wrong answer? And this is a game changer. The wrong answers are deliberately crafted, deliberately designed to look right. And you've got to be able to spot the trap and label it. You want to know, was it too strong? Was it out of scope? Did it distort the reasoning? Because if you can name the trap, you can dodge it next time around. And top scorers don't just move on, they track their mistakes. You want to set up a simple spreadsheet with columns like the question number, the section type, your mistake, meaning what you did wrong. You want to note the trap type, meaning which trick you fell for. And you want to note what you're going to do differently next time around. This will help you recognize patterns, and you'll start to see, for example, maybe you tend to rush through weekend questions. Maybe you fall for extreme language a lot. Maybe you tend to misread conclusions under pressure. You want to make sure that you're not just practicing, but you're also improving. Now, review is where most people leave points on the table. If you got it right, but for the wrong reason, that's still a hidden weakness. You want to ask yourself, could you defend this answer under pressure out loud to somebody else? If not, you want to review it and you want to fix it. Otherwise, you're building confidence on a shaky foundation, and you better believe the LSAT's going to find that crack. Now, one of the most effective review drills we teach our students is to take a question that you got wrong, cover the choices, and walk yourself through it again from scratch. You want to re-identify the conclusion and the reasoning. You want to predict what a correct answer should do, and then, and only then, reveal the choices and pick again. This is going to retrain your brain to process things more cleanly the next time around. Now, let's say you've done the drills, you've learned the strategies, you reviewed like a top scorer, but you're still making mistakes with your review. The first big mistake is reading too fast, and then as a result, rereading 5 times again. Reading faster doesn't necessarily save time if you don't understand the argument. So I want you to try slowing down up front and understanding it the first time. Even if it saves you 10 seconds now, or costs you 10 seconds now, it's going to save you 30 seconds later. The second big mistake is skimming the question stem. People will often rush to the stimulus before they even know what the question is asking. The question stem tells you the job to be done, the job that you need to perform. So I want you to read the question stem first, understand what the LSAT wants from you, and only then dig into the stimulus. Now, the third big mistake is letting the choices dictate your thinking. And this one is huge. Most people read the stimulus, then go straight to the choices, but they forget everything they just read. So I want you to try making a prediction first. Ask yourself, what kind of answer should I be looking for here? That single moment will save you from 5 traps in a row. Now, the fourth big mistake is subtle but dangerous. It's over-explaining wrong answers, trying to force them to be right, like fitting a square peg in a round hole. Just doesn't work. I want you to stop defending your mistakes, stop arguing with the answer key or arguing with the LSAT makers. Instead, dissect the reasons behind your mistakes. Top scorers are ruthless with their wrong answers. They don't ask, how could this have been right? They ask, why is this clearly wrong? That shift will save you from repeating the same error 100 times. Now, the fifth big mistake is thinking that more practice will automatically fix everything. More questions do not automatically equal more progress. If you're doing 100 questions a week, but you're not improving, it's not a quantity problem. It's a quality problem. You don't need to drill another set of 10 questions. You've got to slow down and understand what went wrong, why it happened, and how to avoid it next time. That's how we help our students break through plateaus, not by grinding, but by reflecting, because logical reasoning rewards clarity over cleverness. The biggest mistakes people make are not about logic, they're about their mindsets and their habits. Now, I've got a question here from Andre asking, I can get inference and must be true questions right after mapping, but for sections and prep test practice, I get hesitant to do so for fear of time. I struggle with whether I should skip right away or to try to map it out. Any advice on this? So it sounds like you can get these questions right in isolation when you're drilling them by type, but then when you're doing them in the context of a section or an exam, things fall apart. You're not really sure whether you can engage in all the formal logic diagramming that you're doing. Is that a pretty fair summary? Okay, so I think that the issue here, Andre, is probably that you're taking this approach to formal logic diagramming that works when you have unlimited time, but you're concerned, maybe rightly so, that when you do these questions in the context of a time setting, that approach is not going to be efficient and you're going to run out of time. And so this comes back to what I was saying earlier, where it's not enough to get the questions right. You got to get them right under test day conditions. And so some idealized approach that works in theory with unlimited time, if it doesn't work in test day conditions, it doesn't work, period. So I want you to try to stop using diagramming as a crutch. Diagramming is not a substitute for thinking. It can help you when you're just learning the basics, but like learning to ride a bike, you've got to take off the training wheels at some point. And I'm not saying that you can never diagram. For some super hard formal logic questions, maybe one or two per section, diagramming might be the right approach. But for you to take that approach for every single one, it just isn't workable. Now, when are you taking the LSAT? Because that context would also help me out as well. If you're taking the LSAT in a couple weeks in November, you've got to stop the majority of your diagramming. There just is not time to mess around with that because test day is coming up too soon. You've got to get ready for the time constraint of the test. If you've got 2.5 months till January or 3.5 till February, it's not quite as urgent an issue, meaning that you could still diagram for now, but then slowly transition out of it. But I think that what you've really got to do here is spend less time drilling questions by type and do more full-length exams in more timed sections with an approach that will actually work given the real time constraint that you face. So yeah, stop drilling and stop diagramming for the vast majority of cases is my short answer here. I don't think that skipping these questions on first sight is workable either because you can't skip everything. I mean, inference questions are one of the most common types in logical reasoning, along with necessary assumption and flaw. Those are the three most common types. So for someone who is on a crash course boot camp style program like ours, where you only have, say, a month till your test, or less than that even, then you've got to focus on the highest leverage areas, but also get ready to work on those under timed conditions. If you have a longer runway for 3-4 months or beyond, then you have time to work on the basics and the fundamentals. And of course, we could talk through this more. If you want to book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start, links below this video on YouTube, link in bio on Instagram. I'm happy to talk through this more and work out a game plan or a plan of attack for you for your LSAT test date, regardless of when you're taking it. That's an open offer to everybody out there watching this. Unpluggedprep.com/start for that free LSAT tutoring lesson. I've got to run, folks. This was a blast. Feel free to tune in soon. And by the way, I'm doing an all-day live stream this Friday, starting at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time in honor of those who took the October LSAT and are getting their scores back this Friday. Again, all day, starting 8:30 a.m., all-day live stream. If you liked this live stream today, you'll probably like that one as well. If you didn't like this, then of course, don't join us. But if you're studying for the LSAT, taking it in November, January, February, or beyond, I'll be here all day doing open Q&A, helping out as many folks as I can. We'll probably go at least 4 or 5 hours, so block off your calendars. It's on this YouTube channel, LSAT Unplugged. I'll be happy to help you out. That's all for now, folks. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.